Good afternoon, everybody. It's a beautiful day, and we are here at the Swansea Conservation Park. So we're going to take a walk around the lake. We're going to take a walk all the way around here. It's a really beautiful area. I got some comments last time about you guys enjoying this walk, and actually this used to be a golf course, as I mentioned. But if you look up, up here, you have the clubhouse up there, where it used to be the clubhouse. There's still a restaurant up there, but nonetheless, I wanted to talk about a topic today that I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I've been actually kind of planning to make a video about it. And I thought now would be a good time to make a video on it. And the fact is, when I was a millionaire, because I was on paper, and I was basically about 25 and 26. That was when it was over a little bit of, over a year, I would say, or less than a year, where it was also during COVID and the market was skyrocketing and going crazy. So it was really easy to make money because the market was just going insane. So you could put money into a stock. And I remember people making videos about how this is not normal to make like 300% and just put your money in real quick and then pull it back out. But that's what people were doing. And it was almost reminiscent of the dot-com bubble, although it was more short-lived, And the dot-com bubble, I think that was more extreme, especially with the birth of the internet and people just going crazy for internet stocks. But with that being said, this was still a very vicious bull market, and it came out of nowhere because if you remember, during COVID, it basically crashed, and then everybody thought the world was going to end, and then it didn't end. And in fact, the stock market rebounded. So when I'm talking about becoming a millionaire from pretty much nothing in 2021, keep in mind it was actually relatively easy for anybody to do the same thing if you're willing to take the risk. And so what happened, or what ended up happening, is I had bought a stock, or a few stocks actually. There was multiple trades involved, multiple stocks. I had to readjust the portfolios. But I had started off going from 5,000 to 30,000, then back down. Then we had actually bought a home in between there, so we went down to 15,000. But it started off under 10,000. So there's a few trades made where we made some money, took some money out for our down payment because we bought a home, my wife and I. And with that being said, you have basically a market now, which if you try to do the same thing, you're not going to be able to succeed. The liquidity is not there. The interest rates are not there. And so, but that's basically what happened. So the peak of the portfolio after that, in fact, in December of 2021, the portfolio had peaked off at over $500,000. It was basically a crazy amount of money. Now, with that being said, the reason I'm talking about this finally is because I want you to learn some lessons so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. And so when you're looking at, being up that much in the market, first of all, there's two emotions in the market, right? There's fear and there's greed. And these are the most basic, fundamental, psychological weapons in the market, you can call them. So essentially what happens is your brain runs on fear because the stock's going down. And your brain is wired to not lose money. Who wants to lose money? Money is survival in this world. You have to have a roof over your head. You have to have food. Why would you want to lose money? So your brain is thinking, crap, I just lost $1,000 in this stock. I have to pull it out now. Now you're taking a loss. You do that 10 times and you lose $10,000. Very basic example. But fear is the motivating factor there. Now on the other end, you have greed. We've talked about this on the channel so many times, right? But it's a very powerful emotion. And in the case of my example, I was invested in a company by the name of Goff, Goff, Golf Corp. And a lawsuit came out of nowhere from the previous CEO who was no longer with the company, but wanted 50 million shares for free. And initially what was going to happen was a merger. And I still am invested in the company. I don't have as large a position as I used to, but it's actually changed now to worldwide NFT. That's not the point. But, the merger that we were expecting to happen did not happen. So at this point, I'm invested in this golf company in December of 2021. And basically my portfolio is over $500,000. It then goes over $1 million by June, early July. And then when we're expecting news of this merger, this transaction that was expected to happen, we instead get the opposite news. So the anticipation, with myself included, I was planning to sell for about 2 million. That was my goal. I was going to get to 2 million and sell, because at that point, my portfolio had already peaked off at 1.6 million. And please understand, this sounds crazy, but this, when you're in the midst of greed and your brain has just made all this money, my thought process was, and I still made a profit on the stock. I still made a six-figure profit across all the trades. I was able to liquidate that, even on my tax returns. There's six-figure profits that I'm actually still paying back. I still have a little bit left to owe the IRS on that because I worked out a payment plan with them. The point is, I just didn't want to pay the lump sum, $30,000 all at once. But yeah, so it's almost paid off though. It's been a couple years of doing that, and that's another thing is the short-term capital gains. Not having it in a Roth IRA is a big problem. Not having it in a protected account when it comes to taxes can be a big issue. So anyway, at this point, I'm 26 years old. June of 2022 comes around and the stock crashes 76% in a single trading day, July 8th. It's actually tomorrow. So it's perfect timing when I'm making this video. It's basically the anniversary of when this happened 3 years ago at this point. And so it'll be the anniversary, and basically at that point, 76% down in a single trading day, and then another combined percentage loss of 99% from the peak. And this is after peaking off at 1.6 million. So I want you to understand this happened over the course of several months, and there still was an opportunity to sell. I had taken profits initially, so I was still able to make six figures on all the trades combined. But I could have made seven figures. That's the point. So what's the motivating factor there? It's going to be greed, or fear and greed. So the second one, number two, greed. So greed is the motivating factor, and you just have to look at greed and say, you know what, I'm up this much, let's take more profits. Instead of taking 100,000, let's take 200,000 profits. Because if you're up that much on a stock, if you put 10 or 20,000 and get a 10x on the stock, which can absolutely happen, that could be a single family home in the Midwest, $200,000. You can still get one. They're not going to be the largest homes. They're not going to be the biggest homes, but you're going to have a single family home around this area you can still get for under $200,000. And those trades do exist out there. But when it comes to getting from 200,000 to 2 million, especially with the stocks I was trading, it's a lot harder because the liquidity's not there, especially in the OTC market. So it can be done, but you need a lot of liquidity, you need a lot of volume. Now, my hope is that when the market starts to lower interest rates, when the Fed comes in and things actually start to really ramp up, I'm a strong believer personally that although we have a lot of doom and gloom about tariffs and all this stuff going on in the economy, this new bill that came out, people are kind of talking about it. There's mixed opinions, but at the end of the day, I feel in my gut that by 2030, maybe things start to unravel again. But until then, I feel like we're going to see a boom. Think about all the AI hype that's still in the air. Companies are still investing tons of money. They want to keep this going. And so it's good for the shareholders. It's good for everybody if they can keep the hype cycle going. So there's going to be another scenario where you see a 2021 post-COVID market where things go parabolic again. And if you're there in that market, you can potentially turn $10,000 into $200,000, $200,000 into 2 million even. But if you're not there and maybe you're just kind of on the sidelines, invested in boring investments like U.S. Treasury bonds, which are being eaten alive by inflation, and all kinds of other investments, just remember, there's always an opportunity out there. So if your goal is growth and you want to get those larger returns like we kind of talk about on the channel and how to do that, you have to focus on not letting greed get the best of you, but also not letting fear. It's a delicate balance because you can make some bad mistakes when you're fearful and you can make some bad mistakes when you're greedy. So always remember that. And when it comes to losing 1 million, right? Remember that it's not really about the money. And that's the thing, like even when I had the money, I wasn't happier. And it was all on paper mostly, even though I was taking some profits and my wife and I were taking some vacations and stuff and my kids were having a good time. It really just felt more like a responsibility and I was afraid to lose the money. So it's kind of one of those things like when you do have that much money, you're afraid to lose it. So you have to be careful because money is deceptive. I'm not setting goals for money anymore. I used to set goals for, I want to make X amount of money, but I feel like that's not a good goal to make. Instead you should make life goals. I want to buy this home in this location and I want to build this home from scratch, or I want to do this, I want to learn how to play golf. I'm getting back into golf. Like I said, this used to be a golf course. But just a couple examples, you know, you have to set those goals. I want to get an MBA, and set those challenges and attack them, right? So, and that's the same thing with becoming a millionaire. I was able to do it in less than a year because the market was hot, but I ended up losing it because I didn't have financial discipline at the time, and I was just kind of winging it, and I was just risking a lot of money. And I've always been a risk taker. That's my problem. So I've learned a hard lesson, and it's how you bounce back from that will ultimately shape your story. And, you know, you guys can make fun of me in the comments about how I didn't sell and all that. You know, that's fine. But the point is, there's always going to be another opportunity out there. If you're in the market today, there's more opportunities than ever. And even with AI and all this stuff and job loss, there's so many more contract opportunities these days. People have always said, oh, if only I could be my own boss. You know how many 1099 contract opportunities are available today? I was able to download like 5 apps the other day, driving apps, delivery apps, Amazon Flex, all of those. If you combine those, you know, you talk about being an entrepreneur, oh, but I don't want to work all the hours and stuff. Well, I mean, entrepreneurs typically work a lot. And even with this channel, I'm making videos on a hot summer day. You know, it's a nice day. I'm going for a walk, but do I really want to be out here? I mean, you know, air conditioning sounds pretty nice, but I enjoy the nice views and everything. Hope you guys do too. And, you know, the B-roll and all that. So I want to come out here and make this video. But it's all about how much you put into it. You know, how much effort are you putting into your goals and what you're trying to achieve. But just remember with the fear and greed thing, and like I said, even if you get $1 million, it might result in temporary satisfaction just due to the short-term gratification of everything and being able to afford more. But after a while, it's the same stake, believe me. And during the short time that I became basically a millionaire on paper 3 different times, as my portfolio wildly fluctuated within that, you know, little less than a year, and went to the multiple 6 figures, just remember that I didn't feel any happier, you know. I didn't feel any, basically all the negative emotions were magnified, and so were the positive ones to an extent, but it's not really gonna make you happier. It might make you more stressed out. It might make you more anxious, and that's kind of what it did for me. And so you have to have a plan when you get that kind of money. So those are some of the lessons I've learned though from this experience, and I hope this can help somebody. You know, if you've taken a large loss in the stock market, if you were up big at one point, maybe back then, like I was, a lot of people were, and you kind of, you know, fell out of grace on that one, but you can be redeemed. You know, you can make another trade because, you know, it's never too late. It's never too late. And I'm turning 30, right? So when it comes to the opportunities that I have in front of me, I would like to believe that with AI and with all this stuff happening, there's going to be so many more opportunities to become a millionaire in the next 10 years than there has been in the last 20. And that's my personal belief. Even though the internet was big, I feel like we're going to have a lot more opportunities coming up in front of us for those who are able to leverage the tools that are most beneficial to, you know, and most valuable to the corporations and everybody who is using them. And we just have to, especially you younger folks, you know, if you guys need to learn how to use ChatGPT if you haven't already. I mean, it's very simple. Just ask it the prompts, upload the data, and give it what it needs. Feed it what it needs. But that's another video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As I kind of am starting to rant here, I better shut this down. But yeah, beautiful day out here. Man, we're walking like 2 miles out on this trail, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off. But thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you all. Hope you all had a fantastic 4th of July. You know, God bless America. Pray for our country, guys. Pray for your enemies. Pray for those who are persecuting you and falsely accusing you, and, you know, whatever it is. Know that your name is blessed in the kingdom of God, you know. And I say that as a believer in Jesus. I am, and I always will be. And I'll acknowledge that. I'm not ashamed of that. So just remember, guys, there's always an opportunity out there. Never focus on the negative. There's always going to be something else that comes your way, you know, and if there's not, then you're in a better place. So don't worry, you know, take one day at a time. Enjoy a walk in the park. You know, money, it can only do so much for you, but peace of mind is so much more important. Just remember that, guys, and hope you all are doing well. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.